As I'm recording this video and as I'm reading this script, it's November 6, 2025. But right now in Sudan, the land of my mother, the land of my father, there's horrific fighting that's happening. Innocent blood is being shed, staining the actual ground red, all because of two people wanting this thing called power. You see, I made a vow to not really talk about politics on this channel, but this isn't about politics. This is personal. As I was studying my Bible, trying to make sense of this whole entire situation, I landed on what feels like probably one of the most impossible commandments given by Jesus himself, and that is to love your enemies. How are we supposed to do that when the enemy is destroying our home? And that is exactly what I want to talk about in today's video. You see, right now, there's blood being shed because of two men, and it all really has to do with the fact of who can gain control over the government. And as a consequence, the lives of innocent people are being taken. Satellite images, I promise you, you can go and do your own research, go do your own homework. Satellite images from space even show blood-stained grounds from the amount of people that are being killed. Unimaginable. You can watch videos on the history of Sudan. You can find videos on the nitty-gritty, tiny details on the politics, on the corruption, on the violence, on the bloodshed. All of that, because I'm not about to get into all of that in today's video. Although, I will say it does tie in today with the message that I'm going to give. So with that said, let's take a step back. Let's push the clock back 2 to 3 weeks ago. About 2 to 3 weeks ago, my friend invited me to go to this Bible study that he started to go to because he thought I might like it. And what do you know? Your brother Genesio liked it. When we were there, we were going around. People that want to go around were giving their testimony of how they came to believe in Jesus, all right? And there was this one guy, and he talked about how he used to be heavily obsessed with politics in an unhealthy way. That is a direct quote from his mouth to my ears, to now you listening and watching this video. He talked about how he put so much trust, so much love, so much passion into people. But until he started to read his Bible, he realized that we can't put our trust and we can't put our faith in men to fix anything. But we must put our trust and we must put our faith in God. When I look back at it, he's absolutely right. 100% absolutely right. We relying on politicians to fix all the issues that we have in the world today is going to be something that is impossible. It's never going to happen, no matter how good the politician looks, no matter how good the politician brands themselves, no matter how good the politician represents himself. It's never going to happen because we as human beings are imperfect people and we can never be perfect. We as human beings strive for improvement and we're never going to reach perfection. The only solution is by having a perfect person, and that is Jesus Christ himself. You see, after that day, I had a slight shift when it came to the whole entire idea of politics. Just as I said in my previous videos, okay, politics are not really my thing, and I don't want to talk about politics in this channel, which I guess I kind of am now to some degree. Just as he mentioned in his testimony of how he put so much into politicians to fix our issues and how they can never fix our issues in society and in the world, and how only Jesus can do that. That same concept applies to the gaps that we have in our hearts. These gaps can include things like loneliness. These gaps can include things like loss. These gaps can include things like trying to find your purpose, from your belongings to even forgiveness, okay? The gap that is in our heart can only be filled by the creator of our heart. And that is Jesus Christ himself. Let's dive into where this whole entire message comes from on loving your enemies. And that is found in Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 through 48. Why the heck do I even want to talk about this chapter? Why the heck did I even stumble upon it? Because I think it directly ties into the politics that's happening in Sudan right now. With the mass murders, with the mass lights that are being put on it, with the news coverage, with the attention. I think it ties directly to Sudan. Even South Sudan with my people as well. The same problem is happening there. If you really want to take it one step further, Forget about politics. It could even tie with something like religion. I think this message of loving your enemies is universal because it holds a golden rule. Now, before I read these verses, I just want to give you a quick look into this book because I don't know who's watching this. This might be your first time. You might not even be a believer. I just want to give you a quick look into this book of Matthew so you know what the heck is going on, so you're not really confused and trying to put all the puzzle pieces together by yourself. Who is the author of the book of Matthew? Well, if you don't know already, it's this guy named Matthew. That's where we get the name of the book. All right? He was also called Levi. The audience in the book of Matthew are Greek-speaking Jewish Christians. And the theme Matthew is presenting is he presents Jesus as the Jewish Messiah sent by God to bring salvation to Israel and to the nations in fulfillment of the Old Testament scriptures. That was deep. It's very important. I'm going to read it again, okay? So Matthew presents Jesus as the Jewish Messiah sent by God to bring salvation to Israel and the nations in fulfillment of the Old Testament scriptures. That is the main theme, or that is the theme of the book of Matthew. So with that in mind, I just want to give you a quick summary of all the chapters that have been happening prior to chapter 5, which is where we're going to be diving into. All right. So in chapters 1 all the way through chapter 2, it's all about the birth and the early years of Jesus. In chapter 3, verses 1 all the way to chapter 4, verse 16, it's all about the preparation of Jesus's ministry. So all the things leading up to when his ministry begins. Like, for example, this is where you hear the stories of his temptation or the baptism, all the baby steps leading for the big boy steps. All right. In chapter 4, verse 17 all the way to chapter 16 verse 20, now we're getting into Jesus's ministry that's happening in Galilee or Galilee, depending on how you like to pronounce it. All right, but specifically in this 5th chapter all the way through chapter 7, Jesus is giving the most famous sermon of all time, which I'm sure you've heard of, the Sermon on the Mount. In this 5th chapter, specifically verses 43 through 48, which I'm about to read, Jesus is giving his interpretation of the law, the Old Testament laws. So with that said, let's read it, and then from there we're going to dissect it by looking at what my study notes have to say, and then we're going to continue on with the message because I promise you, it all comes together in one big full circle. All right, so let's read Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 48, and the section of this excerpt is love your enemies. Verse 43, it says, "You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy." Verse 44, "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." 45, "That you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous." Verse 46, "If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that?" Verse 47, "And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that?" Verse 48, "Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." These are the words of God. This is the words of Jesus himself. Amen. So with that said, all right, let's dissect into what the study notes have to say on each of these verses, because I think there's some things here that are really, really important that we should know about before I continue. In verse 43, when it talks about hate your enemy, this is what it has to say. These words are not found anywhere in the Old Testament. However, hatred for one's enemies was an accepted part of the Jewish ethic at the time in some circles. It told me to look at, for example, the Dead Sea Scrolls, where they dive deep into that. Hatred for one's enemies was accepted. Kind of looks like the world we live in today. Verse 44, when it says love your enemies, this is what it has to say. Though this explicit command is not specifically given in the Old Testament, it is exemplified in commands such as that found in Exodus chapter 23, verses 4 through 5. In the same verse 44, when it says the word pray, this is what it talks about. Prayer is one of the practical ways love expresses itself. Think about that for a second. Prayer is one of the practical ways love expresses itself. Verse 45, when it says, be ye children of your Father in heaven. This is what it talks about. Be truly like him by loving your enemies and praying for those who persecute you. We can look at verses 44, 48, and the notes that it provides. In the same verse, when it talks about the evil and the good. Actually, I want to read that verse for you really quick. 45. That you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. When we look at that verse, it talks about how God shows his love to people without distinction. God shows his love to people without distinction. You see, that reminds me of something, all right? When you look at other religions, or at least the ones that I'm thinking of right now, there's always a prerequisite to get love from God. But when we look at the God of the Bible, the one triune God that presented himself from Genesis to Revelation, his love is unconditional because his love is for all people. There's no prerequisite to get his love. That is why the Bible teaches to come as you are, because God will transform you from the inside out. There's nothing that you can do to earn the favor of love. Love is an ultimate gift that God is giving to you. And that was revealed through his son, Jesus Christ. God shows his love to people without distinction. So it don't matter if you're black. It don't matter if you're white. God's going to show his love to you. It don't matter if you're once a racist. God's going to show his love to you. It don't matter if you're a Hindu. It don't matter if you're a Muslim. It don't matter if you're a Satanist. And deep down inside, you're yearning for the one true God to answer you. And when I say one true God, I'm talking about specifically from the Bible. God's going to show his love to you. You don't have to be a Christian to get his love, because God's going to always show his love to you no matter what, like a true father would to his children. No matter how good you are, no matter how bad you are, no matter how far you astray, a good father will always love his children. And that's exactly what the God of the Bible is to us. To someone like me, to someone like you, he'll always show his love. Verse 46, tax collectors. Tax collectors are local men employed by the Roman tax contractors to collect taxes for themselves. Because they worked for Rome and often demanded unreasonable payments, the tax collectors gained a bad reputation and were generally hated and considered traitors. Fun fact, if you did not know, Matthew himself was a tax collector until he became a follower of Christ, until he became a disciple. His old ways were no more. His new ways are in Christ. Verse 48, when it talks about be perfect, this is what it has to say. Be perfect, or complete and whole. Jesus sets up the high ideal of perfect or complete love, including both attitude and action. This is God's high standard for his people, empowered by the presence of Jesus in their midst. Small verse package, but it got a high price to it. All right, it got a high price to it. So with that said, let's dive a little bit deeper, okay? Let's try to intertwine this now with the whole entire Sudanese conflict. You see, I was listening to this sermon from a pastor, and his name is Pastor Vlad Savchuk, okay? And he was giving a sermon talking about temptations. If you want to listen to it, I'm going to put the video link in the description. I love listening to this guy because he's gold. All right. But Pastor Vlad made a very good point that when it comes down to temptations, the devil and his demons come when an individual is hit. And I said that correctly. Hey, I'm not talking about lit, like we going wild now, you know what I'm saying? Put me at the shot, you know what I'm saying? Another one. No. I'm talking about when an individual is hit. H.I.T. So what do I mean by hit? When you are hungry, when you are isolated, and when you are tired. And he brought up Jesus' temptation in the wilderness as the core foundation and the core example in his teaching. Let's begin. Jesus was hungry. That is our H. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. There we see the devil come and begin his temptings. Yes, physically, Jesus was hungry. Yes, physically, we can get hungry ourselves. But this hunger goes above and beyond. When we look at ourselves, for example, this hunger might be a spiritual hunger. For example, you're yearning for something divine, yearning for something that's supernatural that only God can give, the devil gonna come. Even desires that you might have. For example, let's say you have a desire to be a multi-millionaire. You're idolizing that. That's a desire, the devil's gonna come. Let's say you have some really strong sexual desires and you need help, the devil's gonna come. Hunger is not always about physically hungry. It's also spiritual. It's also our desires as well. That is where we get our H. Isolated. We see Jesus was alone and he was in the wilderness. Again, we see the devil come and we see the devil tempt. We've all been isolated. We've all been alone. But if we take that one step further, it could be, for example, not having a community. It could be not having a group. It could be not having a tribe. It could be not having a belonging. It could be not having a team. This is where we get our isolation. This is where we get the I. T. Jesus was tired. Of course, if you've been in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, you're gonna be tired. Yet again, we see the devil coming to do one job and one job only. Tempt. You see, we all get tired. But when we get tired, that's when we get lazy. When we get lazy, that's when we get weak. And when we get weak, that's when the whole entire cycle continues. And that is where we get our T in hit. What's funny is when you look at all this as a whole, this is when the devil starts to prey on you like a predator. This is when he starts to play with you like a wild animal. Because when he sees you're hungry, when he sees you're isolated, and he sees you're tired, instantaneous gold in his eyes. When you look at this as a whole, when you look at the message that Pastor Vlad was talking about, this same exact pattern that the devil did with Jesus himself is the same exact pattern that we are finding in the world today. It's all the same tactics used then are being used now. The devil is playing the same game. He's just getting crafty and playing it in a different way. For example, let's say you know how to play the game of chess. There's always going to be one winner. However, you can get crafty and move different pieces in different way to get the goal of winning. You might move a pawn here. You might move a king here. You might move a rook here. You might move whatever the case is, a queen. The point is, the same tactics the devil was using then on Jesus Christ are the same tactics that he's using today in our world, from our society, from our communities, even within our family itself. For example, look at this. Why is it in the world today, when you look at areas where there's serious hunger, let's look at physically hungry, okay? It's usually going to be high famine, but there's also some type of corruption behind it. Even if we look at spiritually hungry, let's look at America, for example, because that's where we're based right now, all right? Look at the church. The church is a hospital. It's a place where people go to get healed. People are spiritually hungry and yearning for God. Now we got corrupt church leaders, corrupt pastors, corrupt bishops, corrupt people that claim to be teachers, preying on individuals like a wild animal. What a weird coincidence. Look at areas where people are isolated. For example, the government may cut off certain things. Why is it there's always some type of corruption that's happening behind it? Look at individuals where people are tired. For example, they may be tired of war. Let's look at Sudan, for example. North and South Sudan. People are tired like no tomorrow. There's always some type of corruption that is lying behind it. The same problem that we're finding in Africa is the same problem we're finding in the Middle East. The same problem that's happening in the Middle East is the same problem that's happening in Europe. From Europe to Asia, to America to South America, all over the world. Anytime an individual, anytime a society, anytime a community, anytime a nation, anytime hunger, isolation, tiredness arise, temptation is going to go up, and the devil and his demons are going to be having their ears pointing up because they have struck gold. Just as history repeats itself, so does the devil and his games. I cannot emphasize this even more. He just gets crafty and he becomes creative. Because unlike God, he has no power to create. He can get creative. He can come and steal, kill, and destroy. Because the devil wants to do these things, he will never have the power to bring life. And that's why you see the devil what? Taking life. And unfortunately, that's what we see in the world today. So what's the whole entire point I want to get across? How am I really supposed to love my neighbor? That's the call to action that I really want to bring across, okay? The world needs love. Right now, the world is hungry for it. And as followers of Christ, we have a mission and we have a duty to be the salt of the earth and be the light to shine brightness on the darkness. Now, what the heck do you mean by being a salt? What the heck do you mean by bringing light to the dark? Just as salt gives flavor, we have to give flavor to the earth. Just as salt preserves, we as followers of Christ have to preserve the earth. Just as salt purifies, we have to purify the earth. By being the salt, we can be and show the earth brightness. We can give it something other than darkness. And because of that, we can then be a beacon of light that shines hope for all people that need it and want it because they are in the dark and they cannot see. That is why we have to be the salt of the earth. That is why we have to be the light of the earth. So now you may be thinking, okay, Genesio, how does one really do that? How does it really tie into the current events that's happening in the world today? Well, just like it talks about in Leviticus, just like in the message that Jesus was talking about to love your enemies, okay? We have to love our enemies like we love ourselves, man. A simple golden rule that's taught since middle school, since elementary school, since preschool. I don't know if it's really taught in high school like that much, but I guarantee you, since you're a little kid, it's engraved in the back of your head. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Do unto others what you want them to do to you. Now, change is not going to happen overnight. I'm not going to be ignorant, okay? I'm not going to act stupid like I'm Thanos. I'm going to put an automatic snap and everything's going to be solved. No, all right? Corruption is not going to be stopped overnight. Hunger, famine, human trafficking, all the issues of the world are not going to be stopped overnight. But if we keep on pushing, the buildup of these small atomic habits, the buildup of these small atomic actions will compound over time. Maybe that means, specifically in Sudan, North and South, by electing officials that actually bear the fruits of the Spirit. Because just like Jesus said, a good tree cannot bear bad fruit. And one way we can do that, one way we can take action is by simply learning to love our neighbors. And that's exactly where this all intertwines, okay? Now, I'm not going to give you like a step-by-step guidance on how to do that because I don't know you personally. I don't know who's watching this. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what your relationship with God is, okay? And I also understand that's also way easier said than done. Me talking just does a little bit, but actions speak louder than words. You can take it or leave it. I'm just here to give my 2 cents. But for anybody that's listening, but for anybody that's watching, take the first step by loving your neighbors just like you love yourself. Because only then, when we as individuals actually love our enemies like we love ourselves, only then will peace happen on earth. If Ukraine loved Russia like the way Ukraine loves itself, there would be peace between these two nations. If Russia loved Ukraine like the way Russia loves itself, there would be peace between these two nations. Let's even tie to religion. If Christians loved other Christians like the way you claim to love yourself, there would be peace within Christianity. The whole point I'm trying to get across, okay, the whole thing I'm trying to drill in your head, man, is to do the golden rule. And that's to love your neighbor like you love yourself, even if that neighbor is your enemy. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to die. And it's all about what you left that can stand on this earth. You see, for my Sudanese people, I think we should start doing that. From the people that are on the very bottom of the barrel on the streets to the people that are high up in power. We need to know how to start loving our neighbors like we love ourselves. And that's honestly the message I got for today's video. Live, love, laugh differently like I'm always going to say, all right? Give your life to Christ right now while you still have the chance before time runs out. That's all I got for today's video. See you guys in the next one. God bless.